Progress, not perfection. Today I have a very special guest, Miss Cindy Winegar. How are you?
I'm good, Della. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous.
Good.
I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Well, thank you.
For most of you that do not know, you are not an addict.
No, never have been.
Never have been.
Mm-mm.
However, you are the mother of an addict.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that, but let's get to know you. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from right here in Knox County. Moved around Knox County quite a bit, but been right here. Sevier County is really my home,
Okay.
and that's where I live now.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many children do you have?
I have one.
One.
Yes, and I was very, very blessed to have him. I could not get pregnant, and took me a lot of money, a lot of time, and by the sheer grace of God that I have him.
It's amazing. And it's a boy.
Yes,
Okay.
my son.
Her son is an addict. Okay, well, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Not to put you on the spot, but have you ever experimented with drugs
No,
in your life at all?
never have. That's why it's really so hard for me to understand.
Right.
I'm not perfect by no means. Nobody is. But that is one thing that I've never done.
Was your son born here in Knoxville as well?
Yes, he was born right here.
Okay, grew up and all that. Well,
Yes.
awesome. My cat keeps running by. That's why I keep looking. So you and his father, were you married?
Mhm. We were married.
Are you still together now?
No,
No.
we're not. We're divorced and I'm remarried.
Oh, okay. I'm also divorced. That's why they make it. So how do you think your divorce affected your son? How old was he?
He was very young. When we separated, he was 3.
Okay.
And then the actual divorce really went through after he was 4.
Okay. So when did you first suspect that he was using? How old was he?
Because I've never been an addict, I was very blinded. I think he was around 15, 16. We had people ask us if he had ever experimented with drugs, and we said no. No, not him. And not that I was one of those moms that said, no, not my child,
Right.
But I really didn't think that he would do that. I just didn't. We'd had extensive talks about it. We had a very close relationship. We had always been really close. And, he came to me with everything. And we had some other issues with friends of his. Not necessarily with drugs, but with drinking. And he had seen a couple of things that really scared him. And so I thought, okay, that's the scared he needed to never be involved in anything like this.
Right. Well, when he found out he was using, may I ask what he was using?
It started out with him smoking pot, and then I think it just grew from there. And how it all came about, I really don't know. What he did first or anything like that, but from what people have told me, he would do anything he could get his hands on.
Right. And a lot of addicts, I was the same way. Once you become addicted, you know, you, all these things come at you, and they're so new and they're fun. And in the beginning of addiction, it is fun. You have great times. I have war stories, but it always leads down the same path every time. So has he ever, when you realized he was an addict, did you confront him?
Oh yes, we did, and actually took him to a rehab to get him into a rehab, and was told that he didn't have a problem.
Really?
And
How old was he?
18 at that point.
So he has been to treatment
Oh, several times.
several times.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of different rehabilitation programs, but yeah, we were told originally he didn't have a problem, that it was more of a mental health problem than a drug problem, and that we needed to seek that type of help. And we did. We did. I was willing to do whatever we had to do, you know, to help him and get through this. And then we found out that it was both.
So he does have mental health issues.
He does.
Okay.
Yes. And so he would do drugs to try to make himself feel normal, you know, because he was not on any type of medication at that time. And you know, I had him to several doctors that said, you know, well, he needs to do this, this, and this, and he would say no, and then they would look at me and say, well, then there's nothing you can do.
Because he was over 18.
He was over 18, and I had no say so. I couldn't make him do anything. And of course, he didn't want the medication. There's a lot of bad side effects to antipsychotic drugs, and so, and it was very hard for us to tell the difference when I say us, I'm talking about my husband and I.
Your current husband?
Yes.
Okay. I've met him. He's awesome. If you're watching this, hello, unnamed husband.
Yes, he is awesome. Most men would not put up with what he has at all, because my son has been horrible, and it has been very hard on my marriage. Very hard. Because where do you draw a line between, you know, your husband and your son? Where do you draw that line? And, you know, what my husband was telling me, I mean, he wasn't trying to make me choose. He would just say, you know, Cindy, I think we need to do this and this. And of course, when my son would balk at that, then I would tend to lean toward him, what he wanted. And I kept feeling like I have this connection with him that my husband doesn't have.
Right.
And so I would lean more toward my son. And it was very, very hard. You know, my son wanted to break up my marriage and did everything he could do to cause that. I mean, right, he even accused him of sexual molestation at one point, and I knew that that was not true.
Was that a part of the mental health issues that he was?
Mm-hmm.
So he just kind of created problems within his mind and then tried to make them true.
Yes,
Okay.
that was his reality. And a lot of it is, and I've learned this over time, most addicts, not all by no means, but most addicts have something very traumatic in their past,
yes,
that caused them to lean toward the drugs.
Absolutely.
And he would hear all these stories from all these people about they were molested as a child, they were, you know, beaten as a child, or whatever the case may have been. He would hear all these stories. He didn't have one of those stories. So he created it.
So he had a very sheltered life.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He was an athlete, a very good athlete. And, you know, we spent our weekends and our vacations on a ball field.
Wow.
And
so baseball, football.
Yeah, baseball, football, basketball, you name it. And he was good at whatever he did. And so he, you know, we would take him anywhere and do anything and spend a lot of money doing that, and just to make him happy.
Right.
I mean, he had a perfect childhood. He did not have stories like other people did. Right. Now, yes, he was a child of divorce, but his father gave him up, signed him over to us when he was 6 years old.
At 6 years old, do you think that your son realized that his father had given him up?
He did. He did, and I know that that was traumatic. I know, but he hadn't seen him in a year at that point. Um, there were a lot of problems with his biological father that it was better that he wasn't around him. Now, there was never any molestation or abuse or anything like that. It was other issues, but you know, my husband now um, was the father that he never had. In fact,
So was he just a stepfather, or did your current husband adopt him?
he adopted him, and it was all his idea to do that, and he was more than thrilled. My son was more than thrilled. It was one of the happiest days of our lives, the day that he did that. And the judge even said at the time, "This is what I do this for." You know.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. Um, so to get to the nitty gritty, his worst day in addiction. Does he have? Obviously, you've seen him in active addiction.
Mm-hmm.
As most addicts, I'm pretty sure he was kicked out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But addicts, we always continue to run back to the parents or whoever we can. So, do you have like a worst day in addiction story?
You know, as far as his worst day in addiction, I don't know because I was rarely around him.
Well, that you witnessed.
But what I saw, one of the worst days we had was one of the times that we finally said, "You have to leave." Um, he and his father, which is his real dad legally, they actually came to blows, and it was very difficult, very difficult. I had to call the police. He had to leave. Um, there was a time period during that time, because it was domestic violence, that the DA actually, and this is routine as far as what I understand, filed a restraining order. So there was a year there that we couldn't talk, we couldn't see each other, nothing. I had no idea where he was, what he was doing, how he was doing. I just prayed every day, nonstop.
I'm very, very, very sorry to hear that. Was he high at the time when the domestic dispute was going on?
Yes, he was. He had come home that way and was being very disrespectful and belligerent, and actually had pushed me. And that's when my husband got involved and said, "You're not going to do this."
Right.
You know.
So he has been arrested due to his drug use?
Yes, several times.
Several times.
Mm-hmm. He's been arrested for possession. He's been arrested for public intoxication. He's been arrested for domestic violence.
It's very, very sad. Sorry, folks, again, sitting in my home. So, how old is your son now?
He's 30. He just turned 30. Which I'm very grateful for, because most doctors told me he would not make it past 28.
Oh, wow. There was a time when I didn't think that I would make it past, well, I think I was 29, 28 or 29. If I hadn't been arrested, then it would have, I'd be dead.
Yeah, sometimes that's a blessing. You don't see it that way at the time.
Yeah.
But it at least gets you off the street and away from the people you need to be away from for a period of time.
Yeah. So, do you know what his drug of choice or drugs of choice were?
Heroin and meth.
It's a bad combination.
Yes, it is, because he's lost his teeth, and he had beautiful teeth. We had spent a fortune on braces. He's lost his teeth. He's lost. I mean, he's very, very thin, very thin.
How long would you say he's been in active addiction now?
12, between 12 and 14 years, I'd say.
Well, that's definitely a long time. So.
And it's not been consistent. There's been times that he has been clean for even up to a year, but then he'll go back.
Always relapses. When you first found out in the beginning that he was an addict, how did that make you feel?
Oh, it crushed me. Absolutely crushed me. First of all, I kept, saying to myself, what did I do? What did I do or say that caused this? That made him think that he needed to go to drugs instead of come to me. It also, I constantly relived every conversation that we had, every moment that we had, that maybe I could have done something to change it if I had known, or if I had just was open enough to see it. I kept thinking to myself, this can't be true. It can't be true. And, it was very hard for us to tell the difference between when he was having a psychotic episode and when he was high. Very hard, because he acted the same, basically. There were a few differences, but the way he appeared was the same. And when you look at your child and you think, okay, they're sick, they have a problem, they have a mental health problem, and the brain is like any other organ in the body. If he had cancer of the brain or cancer anywhere, would you kick them out? Would you, not want them around, or would you fuss at them for it, or would you, say, you're going to have to stop this, or if you don't want treatment, you can't be here, that kind of thing? No. So when you're looking at the mental health aspect, mentally, he could not recognize he had a problem. So he refused everything, especially when he had to deal with the side effects. Now, there was a year there that the court ordered him to take his medication, and he did. But as soon as that year was up, he was done. He said, nope, that's it, I'm done. And so if he would actually take his mental health medicine, he could do a lot better.
Right.
And would not need, I don't think he would feel the need for the drugs.
Right.
Like he does when he's not taking them.
It balanced him out, the medication.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of addicts who have especially mental health issues, we try to fill that void and, get to a certain level to where we don't have to feel things, think about things, and it's a fine line. And with serious mental health issues, I don't know what his were, but it can be a very confusing time.
It's very confusing, and there is no help whatsoever, because he has to be willing, and you can't force them. But mentally, they're not in a place to where they can realize.
Yeah.
So to me, that's just wrong. It's wrong. I think if you have 2 family member signatures and 2 doctor signatures, you should be able to force someone to get help.
Right.
But that's not where we are.
Well, I see you getting a little emotional. We're going to take a little break, and we'll be back in just a few moments.
When it all first started, basically, I would have to go to bed, and I'd be in bed for days. I just didn't want to deal with reality. I kept telling myself, this can't be happening. This is not at all what I signed up for here. And so I would, I'd go to bed, try to ignore the world, until one day my husband said, okay, you can't live life like this. So I went to the doctor, and talk to him, and of course I have to take antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicine. And there are times when the anxiety really gets bad, um, especially when he is using, because he blows my phone up. And I now have PTSD when I hear a phone ring.
Really?
I can't stand it. My insides tie up in a knot, and I can't breathe. And it's, I have, that ringer has to stop immediately. Um, so it's affected me greatly. Um, it's just changed who I am.
But what about now? I mean, are you still feeling the same
Yes,
depression and anxiety now?
I do.
Um, is he in active addiction as me and you were speaking right now?
To be honest, I don't know. He's not in a good place. He's living with a friend that it's not good for him. He came home over the holidays and was living with me and was clean, and things were great. And then all of a sudden he just said, "Okay, I'm leaving." He, we've had to move a lot. I've lost jobs. He would call my job over and over and over and over, and it was nothing for my phone to ring 80, 90 times a day.
Just during your work?
Yeah.
What reason would he?
He wanted money.
Oh, okay.
He wanted money, and he was relentless. And he would just show up. In fact, he would just show up and cause scenes, and so I've lost jobs, I've lost homes. Where we live now, he did not know where we lived until this past Christmas.
How long have you lived at your current residence?
3 years.
3 years, and he never knew.
Mm-mm.
Wow.
No, he would show up in the middle of the night and take boards and try to bust windows, and he's broken into my home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Um, he has been on the street. He has lived on the street, and he's lived from house to house to house, and he has couch surfed more times than I can even imagine. But that's where it goes. That's where addiction goes. You don't have a home. You don't have a family. You don't have a life, and you don't have any way to get help. And that's where I think, there are places, there are shelters and places, but they're not safe. So I don't know what the balance is there. If I had the answers, believe me, I would do everything I could do to beat down the mayor's door or whatever we had to do to get those answers, but I don't have them. There are people way above my pay grade that don't have the answers, and I don't know what to do. But basically, people that want help should be able to get it, whether they have insurance or not.
I firmly believe that.
And if you're willing to put in the work for yourself, that little card shouldn't keep you from doing it. But you've got to have some help. You cannot be on the street and then all of a sudden just say, "Okay, I'm not going to do drugs anymore, and I'm going to live a regular life." It doesn't work that way when it's in your face constantly. And I think the homeless population here in Knoxville is something that has to be addressed first and foremost, because the majority of them are addicts.
That's very true.
They are addicts, and it just boils down, they have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Their families have turned away, and I understand that because I had to do it myself. You have to protect yourself. You have to turn them out, basically, and that's something I never thought I would do. Never.
Well, what would what would you say to the mothers of addicts? What would your message be to them? What kind word could you give to the mother of an addict?
To hold on, as long as they are alive, there is hope. A very special person in my life gave me something at Christmas last year that I look at every day, and it's a snow globe that says hope. And she explained to me that what hope stands for is hold on, pain ends.
Amen.
And that's what, between my faith and just knowing that we are given children by God, and this is my faith talking here. We're given children by God, but they're not ours. They're ours to raise and do the best we can, and I did that. I did the absolute best I could. I was always there for him. But there comes a time when they belong to the world and they belong to God. And all I can do is pray. And I do that more times than I can count during the day. I'll just stop and just say a little prayer when he runs across my mind that, God keeps him safe and keeps him, helps him make the best decisions he can. And that someday it will all click for him. And maybe he'll come home. Maybe he'll realize what family means.
Well, thank you so much for being on Progress Not Perfection. And,
My pleasure.
I hope things get better for you. I hope your son finds his way and gets the help that he needs. And maybe one day we can have him on the show as, talk to him about his journey from his point of view. But thank you so much. And
You're
again,
welcome.
This is Progress Not Perfection. My name is Della, and I'm here with Cindy.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.